Origin PC has stepped up to the plate and said, hey, Robey, you need to take a look at our new EVO line of laptops. And when Origin PC asks, we must oblige, right? I mean, we don't want to be rude, do we? I mean, we have manners here at Robeytech. I am a fan of Origin. Heck, I own 2 of their laptops and have paid for them myself. I like what Origin and the team in Florida are trying to do for the high-end gaming PC market. From their unique customer service approach to even their fabled crates that systems come delivered in, they are trying to do it right. Now, I say trying because I know with like shortages, etc., folks have had to be patient, or not so patient, waiting on getting their systems in the past. Sure, they aren't perfect, and they do have their issues, but I see a lot of them trying to do the right thing for the customer and bending over backwards at times to have to do so. In fact, I have a video out right here on the Origin difference and what it means to own an Origin PC. So why is this at the beginning of a laptop review then, Robey? Because it's another important part of what you are buying into when you get a piece of hardware. So as much as the hardware matters, when it comes to like pre-builts or laptops, you want to have a customer-focused org on your side when something goes wrong. Just saying. Anyway, enough about that. Let's go ahead and dive into the EVO17-S. First, let me say there are 3 new laptops from Origin PC. The EVO14-S, the EVO15-S, and then you've got the EVO17-S. Yes, the number in the model refers to the screen size, 14-inch, 15-inch, and 17-inch. For today, we're going to be focusing on the 17-inch model, as that's what we actually have here in the studio now. By the way, I want to say thank you for watching this video. Seriously, thank you. And if you like this kind of content and you want to see more laptop reviews like this or our upcoming coverage of the EVO14-S, then ensure you like and subscribe. Also, leave us a comment. We would love to hear about what we can do better and what you actually enjoy here on the channel. Okay, so let's start with the configurations you can get. For display, you have 2 options. You have an FHD 1080p 144Hz model, or the one we got, which is the QHD 2K 240Hz. For the CPU in the 17-inch model, it's the 12th Gen Core i9-12900H. Your GPU is the NVIDIA RTX 3080 Ti with 16 gigs of VRAM. We have 32 gigs of 4800 MHz DDR5, but you have the option to customize up to 64 gigs of RAM should you want to on the Origin website. We have a Corsair MP600 Pro XT 1TB NVMe SSD, but you can add up to 8 TB of storage if you have like a lot of kitty memes, and that is a lot of kitty memes. The 17-inch model is locked with only 2 core configurations. The first, 12900H 3080 Ti for the 2K display at 240Hz, and the 12700H 3080 Ti for 1080p 144Hz. For gaming, this is perfect. And frankly, I applaud Origin for these 2 versions, as laptops aren't really very good 4K gaming platforms. The GPUs just really aren't there yet. Sure, you're gonna argue with me, and honestly, I'm prepared for it. But 4K gaming is still somewhat of a farce even on the desktop side, and laptops are only further hampered by the power limitations of the GPU. The EVO17-S comes in at 15.5 inches long, 10.2 inches wide, and is just 0.78 inches thick. It truly is a thin laptop and bonkers light for being 17 inches. Unfortunately, the EVO17-S still has a pretty big brick. So even though the laptop is light, you're still carrying them both around, which comes at closer to 10 pounds. We have a 17-inch 2K 240Hz display that is 100% sRGB and quite gorgeous. I love the keyboard. It's one of the most unique ones I've used, and it's got a good amount of resistance and a really nice tactile feel to it. The touchpad, I miss the lack of buttons. I have never liked having to press on the pad itself, and it feels like it isn't as accurate as having 2 buttons like the older model. For ports, you've got those 2 USB 3.1 Gen 1 Type A ports. You've got 1 USB 3.1 Gen 2 Type A port. You've also got 1 USB 3.1 Gen 2 Type C port that also supports Thunderbolt 4, DisplayPort 1.4, and PD charging via Type C adapter at 40 to 100 watts. Thunderbolt 4 does mean eGPU if you want, just something worth flagging and one of the benefits of having an Intel here. We also have an SD card reader, which is awesome, and we don't see that enough on a lot of laptops anymore. Now we have an HDMI 2.1 port, 1 audio out jack, 1 mic in jack, 1 DC in jack for your power cord, and finally we've got 1 RJ45 Ethernet jack that supports up to 2.5 gigahertz. And all of that at 0.78 inches thick. That is a ton of connectivity for the size. Now, one thing I also think is really worth mentioning is that all the core connectivity parts are coming out of the back of the laptop. And you don't look like you're typing on some sort of electric octopus with cables coming out in like every direction. Oh, one more thing about customization. Origin PC does offer a lot of options for HD UV printing on the clamshell, and they even offer laser etching. Unlike the UV, the wrap has some texture options, which is really cool, but also like Jay, we've already seen wear and tear early on in our wrap, and more likely we'll end up removing it just like he did. We saw some heat lifting up here in the back, and we actually saw some parts actually pop off. Now, before we get into the performance too much, we wanted to state something that kind of hindered the EVO17-S laptops and benchmarks. Right out of the box, we noticed that the system service was running a constant 5% CPU draw if your program are polling hardware results and stats like FPS, temps, etc. We're not sure if this was like a hardware interface issue or not, but here at Robeytech, we always test and review things honestly and openly, regardless of our relationship with a manufacturer. Now, according to them, it appears to be unique to our sample, but we don't have a second one to verify that against, so we're taking them at their word, but we're still gonna tell you about it in our review. So your results when you actually get this, if you wanted to do these, may actually be higher on your own system. As this PC is spec'd, it comes in at just a little over $3,300 versus a similarly spec'd Razer, which comes in at $3,999, which is a $600 difference in cost. So why is the Razer more expensive? Well, for one, it's a Razer, and the second is actually their vapor chamber cooling system, which is pricey, but it does an excellent job of cooling a 12900H. Now, what Origin did is cool with a less expensive method and use the cooling capabilities of the CPU to actually do the rest, aka thermal throttle. Let's take a look here at the graph of our testing in AIDA64. Now, this is the worst case scenario, and you shouldn't see this much throttling in gaming, which let's hope we're not seeing a 15% thermal throttle, but this is what Origin is doing. The Evo is intentionally letting the CPU throttle to cool itself, and therefore data between the CPU and the GPU is slowing down, and hence you're seeing a slow number in the frame rate. Now, for our gaming benchmarks, we switched up a few games, added some new ones, and removed some of the ones that are complete dumpster fires at the moment. We're kind of looking at you, Warzone. For Cyberpunk at 1440p with RTX on Ultra and DLSS set to Ultra quality, we saw an average of 81.05. For Shadow the Tomb Raider at 1440p on the highest preset and DLSS set to Ultra Performant, we saw an average of 134 frames per second. Here's where we saw our first issue with how the EVO17-S handles cooling. On the same hardware and resolution on the Razer Blade 15, we saw 160 frames per second, which is quite a jump. For Metro Exodus, with RTX on high and DLSS set to balance, we saw 68 frames per second. Dirt 5 1440p Ultra Graphics, 81 frames per second compared to 74 on the Razer Blade. And finally, rounding out the single player, Borderlands 3, we got 69 frames per second compared to Razer's 66. Now let's jump into multiplayer games. Apex Legends, 183 FPS compared to Razer's 230 frames per second. Now Valorant is new to our testing, and we don't have another system to compare it to because we didn't run this on the Razer, but we came up with 239 frames per second on the 3 runs we did on the game. Oh, and we had a 240 hertz display here, so we hit the mark and didn't go over, so we didn't have any tearing or anything like that. Finally, Fortnite. And much like our single-player game, Shadow the Tomb Raider, and similar to what we saw in Apex, we did see CPU thermal throttling here, and so the game was CPU-bound, and therefore we only got 204 frames per second, which I know, it sounds great, but when you compare that again to the Razer laptop, which came in at 301 frames per second, we lost almost 100 frames due to the throttling here. Okay, so there you have it, the EVO17-S in a nutshell when it comes to gameplay benchmarks. I really wanted this laptop to blow everything we've seen out of the water. I really did. For most single-player, on-the-go gaming experiences, this laptop is the bee's knees, where you really are flexing the GPU and the CPU work needed isn't gonna hinder the experience at all. If you need greater than 200 frames per second and that really matters to you, then you may wanna look at the Razer 15-inch 240Hz QHD model instead, where the CPU and GPU have the cooling necessary to be the powerhouse couple you need and deserve. However, if 165 frames per second is good enough, and I mean, it blows my mind that I have to say that, because it is for most of us, and you want a bigger screen and a cheaper price, then this laptop is gonna be your better option. So that's it. Do I recommend it? Absolutely, if those criteria are good enough, and if you want something faster and you care more about the cooling, etc., and you need basically full power all the time, then you may wanna get something a little bit more expensive. But you know what? It's not about what I think, it's about what you think. So tell us your thoughts, and maybe win a little cash in the process. First and foremost, you need to leave a quality comment down below, along with liking and subscribing to the channel. Now, when I say quality comment, it doesn't need to be positive, it just needs to be something you liked or didn't like about the video, what surprised you, etc., about the laptop or the video itself. Just not, I deserve to win, can I have a free laptop, or something similarly weird or lame. You also need to ensure you have a way for us to reach you via your YouTube profile, like your email. So put your email in your YouTube profile because we will be giving away $25 to one lucky comment below that is worldwide as long as you can accept PayPal or Venmo. So, what did you think of the EVO17-S? Would you rather have the higher price, or are you okay with the compromise that Origin did? What are your thoughts on the laptop? I would love to know all of that and more down in the comments below. Now, while you're down there, make sure you slap that subscribe button, whip that like button, and ring that notification bell so you get a notification each and every time we post a new video right here on Robeytech. Did you know I have a live stream channel for special builds and events? Check out Robeytech Live down in the description below so you can like and subscribe and know when we actually go live there as well. Do you have questions about the Origin EVO17-S or other tech-related questions? Then check out discord.gg/Robeytech, which is filled with other tech and PC enthusiasts that love to share their thoughts and ideas on these very subjects. Are you looking for cheap tech? Then check out @Robeytech.com or @Robeytech Deals on Twitter. We have our guy Tom scouring the internet for the best deals on all things tech, from PC components to televisions. Finally, you can also follow me and my entire team on all the other socials @Robeytech absolutely everywhere. We hope you enjoyed this video and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.